Hi, I'm John from the Scenic Factory. I'm going to show you how to apply bark texture powder to achieve a convincing looking trunk. This particular trunk, we're going to do a pine tree. We're going to use the Scenic Factory bark texture powder in the dark gray, BT-01. I'm going to use a previously shaped and sealed 18-inch trunk. It's sealed with full strength matte medium. I do this to seal it to prevent the mixture from soaking in, thus distorting the trunk. Also, since it's balsa, it makes it a little bit stronger. By the way, I'm not an audio video expert. I just wanted to get some videos out to help better show some of the product, make it a little bit easier in case there's any questions. Also, you'll notice my fingers are a little bit wrecked. You'll see that through the video. Not much I can do about that. We're going to take a mixing container. I like to use plastic cups. They're cheap, they're small, they're flexible. We'll cut the bottom off. That way when we're done, we can actually crush them out and reuse them. Just makes it easier. Okay, we're going to take some powder. I use little plastic spoons, whatever works for you. You only want to mix what you can use in about 10 minutes. As you'll see, we really barely used anything. These containers go a long way. I use distilled water in everything I do. I just put it in a spring water bottle to make it easier. Doesn't really matter a lot. I just like to use distilled water because it's pure, and that way I know all my results come out the same. If I have a problem, I can't really blame it on the water. You want to mix this to a paste consistency. If it's too watery, put a little more in. Usually takes a couple times to do it. If it's too thick, it dries too fast. If it's too thin, it takes forever to work with. Now the powder is light to start with. When you mix water with it, it gets dark. It will lighten up again as it dries, so don't be that concerned. Pine trees are a nice dark gray color. If you want later, you can actually dry brush them also. Another thing we do, or I do, you can mix plain Jane acrylic paint with it. A couple drops goes a long way. I use the black and brown. I vary it to give you different variations. You have to do a couple trunks to really know, because it looks so dark now. You have to know what it looks like in the end before you really put paint in it to alter the color. What we want to do is get right into it. I use plain, cheap craft hobby brushes. I go through quite a few of them. Doesn't really make a difference. These will go for quite a few times. Then basically you just chuck them. But once they harden up, or once the mixture stiffens up, you can rinse it in water, wish it around, dry it off with a paper towel, and you can get back to doing it. What I like to do is usually about a third of a trunk at a time, depending on how big it is. What we want to do is just add some of the mixture. You don't want it real thick. You're going to see some of the trunk come through. You just want it uniform. You don't want it globbed. If you glob it, just smooth it out. We're going to work with about a third of the trunk at a time. I can tell right off the bat this mixture is a little bit wetter than I would normally use, but it's okay. It'll just buy us a little extra time. Once it's on, we put it in a nice even strokes. Again, this is about a third to a half. And I'll test it. I'll start to stipple it. I can tell right off the bat that it's a little bit wet. I have plenty of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the trunk a little bit farther. Again, you don't want it too thick. 22-inch trunks and up, or some of the big fat ones, you want to see a lot more texture. That's okay. The smaller ones, you don't want too much. The foliage is going to disguise quite a bit of it anyway. But it looks a whole lot better than just running a hacksaw blade up and down it. Pardon me, dealing with a cold. Alright, now we're going to go, same brush, and lightly stipple it. We just want to start getting some texture going. Again, I can tell it's a little bit wet, so we got plenty of time. I could actually do this whole trunk, but for video purposes I'll stick with just 3/4 of it. If it's too wet, it dries pretty quick. Once it's on a thin dowel like this, even as much as a minute will start to dry it up. Now you can kind of see This is thick. This is just the first round of starting to move the product around a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is just keep going back and forth because it dries relatively quick. And this is kind of all up to you on what you want the finished product to look like. I say leave it a little coarser than finer if you think the texture is too much, because like I said, once you put the foliage on it, it's going to disguise some of it. It's kind of nice to see some texture show through. Now there's going to be spots where you see the trunk through, the light tan part. You can either leave it, which I do, or you can go back over it. Let's find some here. And stipple it some more. See, there's a little bit in here. You can go over it, you'll just keep covering it. I like it, it gives it variation. Plus what I do with our trunks, after this stage, which I'm not going to go to in this video, that are the trunks that we sell, that are in the kits and the complete trees. Once this dries overnight, it goes through 2 more steps of alcohol and ink washes, which gives it a nice variation of color and blotchiness that you kind of see in nature. I'm not going to show it on this video. You have to be very careful if you do that. If you put it on too heavy and move the brush around in the wrong way, it actually re-softens up this texture, and you can wipe it right off or smooth it off or make a mess. Try it on a scrap tree first. You see, we just keep working our way up and down it. You can kind of see it starts to smooth it out. Again, there's spots right in here. It's a little bit light if you want. Just go over it a little bit more and it'll start to fill it in. And when it's almost dry, you can go over it and it'll definitely fill it in. Alright. This gets us down to our last bit here. Again, here's the end. This area where we leave an inch, this is what I hold on to, or what you can clamp to. Even though this is an 18-inch trunk, this is actually a 19-inch trunk. I leave that there for you to cut off, so it gives you something you can clamp onto or hold on to for this. And that way you're not chopping off the good part of your tree in the end because you made a mess holding on to something. If the brush stiffens up, just dip it in some water, wish it around, and dry it off with a paper towel. You can come right back on. Usually you only get 1 tree out of a brush before you have to clean it. Now if it starts to dry quick, you always want to stipple the blend first where you left off. Just get it a little bit just to make sure you don't have a variation. And then go right down the trunk again. Same thing. This is a little wet. Take another minute or so for this to dry to finish the stipple of this up, which allows you to go back down to the other end. Double check what you want. Once this is dry, it's dry. You're done. You're not doing anything else to it, so make sure you get it where you want it. Again, this is going to dry a different color, basically. It's going to dry a lot lighter. So once you do a couple and you get used to it, you can know if you want to darken the mixture up ahead of time first. But I've made this texture powder color to come out pretty much what you want. Go back to where the blend was here. Stipple it a little bit. I don't know if I mentioned I put wax paper down. Just protects your surface. Because little bits and pieces come off when you're done, just throw it out. Excuse me. And check it out when you're happy with it. Again, if this was a 12-inch trunk, you might even knock the texture down a little bit more. Just scale-wise. Again, these areas where it shows through, you can dab it to make them disappear if you want. Another thing you can do is spray them with a brown primer. Not a brown primer, I'm sorry, a gray primer instead of a matte medium. If you don't want stuff to show through, and you don't actually have to put on as much texture powder. I kind of like this way. Works out good, and there you have it. Again, this will dry overnight. Here's what I did a while ago just to show you a color variation as it's drying. You can see the lighter one, that's the exact same powder. This is about 3/4 of the way dry, but you see how it lightens up. You can also dry brush them in the end if you want to really highlight them. In a different video, when I do a distress trunk, I'll show you how we use acrylics to mimic some more effects. Okay, there you have it. Hopefully this video was helpful. Again, let this dry overnight, and then you can apply foliage. Thanks for watching.